What is up, guys? We are back for another episode of PLT Talks, episode 6 here. Just before we get too into it, just please remember to like and subscribe. It means a lot to me. Okay, now getting straight into things. Topic today is skill practice. Now, you might have heard this term being thrown around in powerlifting, but you probably know what it means, but I feel like a lot of people don't really know what this means. Skill practice, as you know in powerlifting, the big three, there's the bench, the squat, and the deadlift. And basically, skill practice means you're getting far better at those movements on a technical aspect. Of course, in powerlifting, you're going to gain a lot of strength. You're going to gain some muscle go along to help with your strength. But I would say if you took someone who could only bench 135 and they did literally everything wrong to a reasonable degree, and then I taught them every little tip you could do on bench press, that bench is a two-plate bench. And that might sound crazy to people, but it can make that much of a difference. So, skill practice. Basically, how you get better at your skills, aka bench, squat, and deadlift, is you, well, obviously do them more. But a lot of people, they don't learn like that, especially with something like this. For example, I've talked about lat engagement, I've talked about setting your shoulder blades right, talked about leg drive, hand position, a lot of that matters. And the thing is, if everyone has ever tried to teach someone that doesn't really have experience benching, it's really easy to overcomplicate it. So, in my opinion, this is my little guide to how to get better at skill practice. Let's talk about the bench press specifically, okay? We're doing that today. For how I would teach someone is I would look at their bench and be like, okay, so these are all the things wrong. Let's say he doesn't set up his shoulders right. For me, I would say that's one of the most important tips, which just pushing the bar away from yourself is a great cue for me. That can massively increase your bench. So I would teach them how to set up their shoulder blades, and I've talked about this before briefly, but a lot of people when they set up their shoulder blades, then they'll push off with their actual front delt to get the bar off, and then they'll hunch over and they'll lose all that, and then they won't be able to get that shelf again. So, for example, my cue would be before you lift the bar up, you're gonna put your hips in the air, and then at this point you should be able to just slightly bend, extend your elbows and bring the bar out. And then before I even start talking about lats, I'm just gonna say bring the bar out to where your bar path is. Set your hips down, and then you go to bench. This way you don't have to hunch over to get the bar off to lose your shoulder stuff. The shoulder shelf, I must call it. Okay, so skill practice. Now, why can't I just grab the 45-pound bar and just do 100 reps and get really good at bench? Well, it doesn't really work like that. See, just like how our muscles need to be challenged to grow, sometimes when you intimate form differences, you need to push that as well. I see a good amount of people, they have any amount of form breakdown, and they immediately drop so much weight until every rep is perfect. But even in a game like powerlifting where you want to be really, really good and really, really perfect at every single lift, you have to train heavy enough, but still challenging your form. Like, for example, maybe you're not comfortable with that unrack that I just explained, and then you go back to that shoulder hunch. Even though that's a worse way of unracking the bar and you waste way more energy, people still do it because they're used to it. So you got to slowly push yourself. If you have a little bit of form breakdown, keep using that weight and then really focus on that cue that you need to focus. Now, speaking of cues, for me, I like to go over one cue, literally just one cue, for 2 to 3 weeks with one person. Get it so they don't even need to think about it. For example, me, there's some cues on bench where it's like leg drive, I'm still trying to master. For example, like setting my shoulders and doing my unrack like I'm doing right here. That I don't want to think twice about that. It's the most natural thing ever. You want to get to the point where every single cue on the movement you're doing is supernatural. And I feel like that point's almost impossible because at some point, one tiny cue or one little aspect of bench, for example, could get a little unsteady or a little weak or you're not quite sure you're doing it right. So what I like to do is I kind of like to shuffle my cues. Right now, for me, my cue is more leg drive, pushing my feet outward instead of pushing down on the ground, which is going to make your butt lift off. So again, I'll really focus on leg drive for these couple weeks, and then I'll kind of assess my bench. I feel like it's good to have a session in there where you're not really focusing on anything particular. You're just focusing on the movement as a whole. And at that point, you might be able to like film yourself and look like, hey, maybe that was missed bad. Oh, I had a misgroove here. Why did I have a misgroove here? All those type of things. Kind of assess your bench, be like, okay, you know what? I'm not using my lats enough. Or another one I know I need to work on is this is a cue where if you try to like you squeeze the bar hard, that's a cue on its own. But then also imagine your hands are coming together. This will actually activate a bit more of your chest. And when I do it right, it's like, wow, I got a great titty pump from that. So like that's another cue which I'm not really too focused on right now because I want to still get really good at leg drive. Leg drive right now is more important than my hands coming together cue. Now, as a new lifter, it might be hard to know what cue is the most important to work on first. And honestly, it's not too, it doesn't matter too much, but if you want my opinion, I would work on attaching your shoulders first, getting lat engagement, and working on proper leg drive, so your butt does not come off the ground. For me, if you're a new person out there and you want to get started, those are the three I'd really focus on. And if you want more detail on those, you can look up plenty of other videos. Probably in the future make very in-depth videos on every single cue that I can think of for bench or deadlift or squat. But yeah, guys, basically, you still need to challenge those cues under heavier weight because that's where form breakdown happens. And if you don't have any form breakdown because you always train too late, then when you go for your heavy reps, that form's not going to carry over so well. So that's basically skill practice in a nutshell. Little side note here, I kind of messed up, and it's only gonna be 2 sets of incline bench here. But anyways, it's pretty technical. Like I try to tell people when I teach them, I'm like, hey man, like I'm not gonna tell you everything you do wrong right now, because again, I'm gonna confuse you. It's pretty easy to get confused. And another thing is people like to just really overthink things. Like I was helping this one guy in squats the other day, and I just noticed I'm like, hey man, you gotta like at least push your hips back a little bit. You can't just go to bend your knees right away. That's not a great squat. And like he would do like 3 reps and it'd look good, but then I could just see in his head he'll kind of like push him back and then pull him back in and push him back again and then squat. Like he was kind of unsure if he was doing it right. So I had to go and be like, hey man, like those first 3 were good, but then like what happened? He's like, yeah man, I was just overthinking it. Try not to overthink things too much. If it's not perfect, that's fine. This is why we lift, so we can get better at lifting. So yeah, that's the basics of skill practice. You can't just train too light, where you're never going to challenge that form. And you also never want to train too heavy, where you don't get enough reps and sets in, where you actually get good at the movement. You want to have a nice balance of days where you're repping a decent amount, but it's still kind of heavy enough where you're challenging your form, and then other days where you're also challenging that form, but it is heavy enough to spark more growth. That's what's super important. Okay, this is where the video is wrapping up. Bit of a short one today, guys. I'm sorry this was meant to be out yesterday, but I forgot. There'll be 2 up today. And yeah, I hope you guys have a great day. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate all the support and everything, and I'll catch you guys next time.